Ships near the core vanished instantly. The Resolute was thrown into a violent spin, systems flickering. When the light faded, only wreckage remained. Somehow the fleet had survived. Barely. Ward coughed through smoke, eyes scanning the display. Aphelion is gone. They'll never use it against us, but the cost had been brutal. Rourke stood silently, watching the last fragments of the station drift. We did what had to be done. Now we rebuild. The fleet regrouped in silence, but even as they processed the victory, the conclave was already moving. The Orion Fleet drifted in the void, scarred but not broken. Aphelion was gone, but its destruction had drained their strength. Repairs were underway, but supplies were dwindling, and the Varaxian alliance was beginning to strain. Inside the Resolute, the bridge was quiet except for the hum of overworked systems. Commander Marcus Rourke studied the latest intelligence. "They're regrouping," Ward said, "pulling fleets from across Council space. Something big is coming. Then we hold the line. Whatever it is, we stop it here." But the conclave had changed. High Counselor Jorath was dead. A new figure now led them, a shadowy strategist known only as the Arbiter. No broadcasts, no speeches, just results. Across dozens of systems, sleeper agents sabotaged supply chains. Subtle attacks softened targets. And then, without warning, the Harrower fleets arrived, ancient warships built before most species had left their homeworlds. Crude, brutal, but unstoppable in numbers. When the attack came, it was like a tidal wave. Harrowers dropped out of warp over the fleet's rendezvous point, unleashing a barrage of torpedoes and energy blasts. The Orion ships scrambled to respond, forming a wall of fire. "They're trying to grind us down," Ward shouted. "Overwhelm us by sheer numbers. Hold formation. Don't let them break the line." Wave after wave of Harrowers surged. Ships were lost. Varaxian captains barked demands for direct engagement. Tensions flared. Then Rourke saw it. This isn't the full strike. It's bait. Before he could act, a second fleet emerged from hyperspace. Sleek, modern warships dwarfing the Harrowers. At their center was a monstrous flagship, glowing with power. The Arbiter had arrived. "Did you really think this would end any other way?" a voice hissed over the comms. "You are vermin scurrying through the ruins of greater empires." "All ships, target that flagship," Rourke ordered. "If we take it out, the rest might scatter." The Resolute and surviving vessels poured fire into the enemy's lead ship. Shield layers peeled away. Explosions tore across its hull, but still it advanced. "The Nova batteries," Rourke growled. "Fire now." The massive cannon lit the void with a searing beam, piercing the flagship's armor and detonating its core. A fireball consumed the ship, its debris scattering the surrounding fleet. Enemy formations broke. The surviving Harrowers faltered. "Withdraw!" someone screamed over conclave channels. They fled, but the victory came at a price. The Orion fleet was battered. Scores of allies were dead, and the war wasn't over. Rourke stood amid the wreckage, watching as the stars slowly emerged from behind clouds of smoke. "They'll be back," Ward said softly. "Then we'll be ready," Rourke replied. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about every world that's been stepped on, every species that's been silenced." He turned to the stars. "We fight for them all." As the Resolute powered away from the battlefield, the stars blurred into streaks of light. The fleet vanished into the void, leaving behind the shattered remnants of the Conclave's last desperate hope. The war would go on, but so would the fight for freedom. The blood of an innocent human child splattered across the cold metallic floor of the Galactic Conclave chamber. The lifeless body, small and fragile, lay crumpled in a heap, a stark contrast to the vast, sterile room filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The alien executioner, a grotesque creature with ridged insect-like eyes and a voice that dripped with contempt, fired his disruptor without hesitation. The crackling bolt of energy ended the boy's life in an instant, silencing his cries and pleas for mercy. All of this was for the alleged crime of defacing a shrine belonging to some obscure alien cult. The brutal act was broadcast live throughout the galaxy. Billions watched as the child fell. His death served as a chilling message. Humanity's defiance would no longer be tolerated. In that moment, a fuse was lit. Aboard the HSS Resolute, Commander Marcus Rourke gripped the edges of his console with white-knuckled tension. His jaw clenched so tightly that the muscles in his neck ached. On the view screen, the smug reptilian face of High Counselor Jarath sneered with cruel satisfaction as he delivered humanity's sentence. Let this be a lesson to your primitive species. Jarath's slitted pupils narrowed as his forked tongue flicked. Any violation of our sacred decrees will be met with swift and uncompromising judgment. Rourke felt a cold rage settle in his chest. Not the wild anger that burned hot, but the slow, smoldering kind born from something ancient. He had feared this day might come, when the Galactic Conclave would cast aside the mask of diplomacy. Yet even he had not anticipated the sheer cruelty of executing a child over a baseless accusation. They killed a child. His voice was low, nearly inaudible, hoarse with disbelief. Beside him, First Officer Delaney Ward stared at the screen, her face frozen with horror. Her grip on the railing was so tight her knuckles had turned white. "What are your orders, sir?" Rourke didn't respond immediately. The eyes of his crew were on him, waiting. In that silence, the weight of history pressed down. Earth had long feared this day and had prepared for it in secret. They had hoped peace would prevail, that mutual respect might grow between species. But now, there was no denying it. The fragile accord was shattered. His voice hardened. "Signal the fleet. Power the Helix cannons. Prepare an FTL jump to Conclave Prime. This ends today." The bridge erupted into motion as officers relayed orders. The ship hummed as energy surged through its systems. Rourke knew there was no turning back. The day of reckoning had come. Deep beneath a mountain range hidden from satellite scans and planetary sensors, a massive facility stirred to life. Once silent halls buzzed with renewed activity. Lights flickered on to reveal ancient warships, their hulls gleaming with a strange iridescent sheen. These were not the crude utility vessels that Earth had presented to the galaxy. These were weapons forged in secret. Commander Rourke stepped into the cavernous hangar, flanked by senior Earth defense officers. The air was thick with dust and the scent of ozone. As they reached the center of the chamber, a blast door several meters thick slid open with a deep groan, revealing a forest of sleek, deadly vessels. Ward approached one of the warships, her hand brushing its hull. The metal felt oddly alive. "I thought the Orion Fleet was a myth," she muttered. Rourke turned, his face resolute. "It's real. Built in the early days of space exploration, hidden from the Conclave's eyes when they restricted us to our home system. They thought they'd caged us. They were wrong." The officers stared in stunned silence. For decades, the Conclave had considered humans a minor presence, a species to be managed, tolerated at best. They had underestimated Earth's resolve. Rourke's voice dropped to a grim murmur. "They want us contained, but now we remind them what happens when you back a predator into a corner." The hangar filled with the sharp commands of engineers and technicians. Systems long dormant blinked to life as diagnostics were run. Massive power cores rumbled in the depths of the vessels. These ships, codenamed the Orion Fleet, were Earth's ace in the void. The fleet's hulls shimmered not with paint or plating, but with materials reverse-engineered from alien wreckage and recovered artifacts from dead civilizations. Organic curves and angular designs meshed together in a terrifying hybrid. Earth had been learning, not begging, not adapting to others' whims, but building something terrible and beautiful in the dark. As Rourke and his officers walked through the rows of warships, the sense of awe was matched only by a growing resolve. The galaxy had drawn first blood. Earth would respond. A hologram flickered to life in the command center, displaying a sprawling galactic map. Strategic points glowed: supply depots, transport lanes, military hubs. Every piece had been studied for decades. Admiral Elias Trask appeared on the screen. His voice carried the weight of long-buried plans. "You've seen the broadcast, Rourke. They've crossed the line. But listen carefully. This isn't just about the Conclave anymore. The galaxy is watching. If we look like warmongers, they'll unite against us. We have to hit hard. But we also have to be precise. And there's more. Trask's face darkened. Our intel suggests they have their own hidden weapon. Something on par with the Orion Fleet, a system killer. We don't know where it is or what it can do exactly, but your secondary mission is to find it and end it. Rourke nodded, understood. As the Orion Fleet surged into action, their engines glowing with barely contained fury, Rourke stood on the bridge of the Resolute watching it all unfold. In that moment, he wasn't just a commander. He was the voice of a wounded planet, the hand of a people who had been mocked and manipulated, the child whose name he would never know had become a symbol, and that symbol would burn into the stars. The Orion Fleet surged through the void, slipping across the star lanes under layers of stealth tech so advanced it defied classification. Ships the galaxy had never seen before moved in formation like silent predators, closing in on their first objective, Conclave Prime. At the heart of the formation, the HSS Resolute led the charge, its angular hull crackling with hidden energy. Commander Marcus Rourke stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the central display. Every breath he took was measured, every motion deliberate. The next moments would define the course of history. Conclave Prime was a symbol of dominance, a planet of gleaming towers and vast orbital platforms. It had stood as the seat of galactic authority for centuries. Today, it would become a battlefield. ETA to target? Rourke asked without shifting his gaze. 2 minutes, First Officer Ward replied. All ships report ready. Weapons primed. The room fell into a taut silence. Every crew member knew the stakes. This was not a mission of conquest. It was a message. Humanity bows to no one. Engage stealth dispersal, Rourke ordered. The fleet shimmered, then revealed itself in full. A wall of warships materialized above Conclave Prime, their presence blotting out the stars. For several seconds, the Conclave's defenses hesitated, unsure if the sensors had glitched or if their nightmares had arrived. Then came the sirens. Begin. The Resolute's plasma cannons roared to life, joined by coordinated salvos from the rest of the fleet. Targeting relays fired in sync. Orbital defenses lit up under the assault, their shields flickering and bursting under the concentrated fire. Strike wings deployed. Squadrons of fighters streaked toward their targets with surgical precision. Conclave's defense stations returned fire, but their response was scattered. Their command network, so reliant on centralized protocols, could not adapt fast enough. On the bridge of the Conclave flagship Celestial Dominion, High Counselor Jorath screamed in disbelief as his screen filled with crimson alerts. Shields failing, platforms collapsing, communication lines severed. How could they have done this? He hissed, his scaled hands trembling. The humans had become monsters in the dark. He barked orders, demanding a regroup, a counterattack, anything to stop the bleeding. But it was too late. The predators were inside the gates. Back aboard the Resolute, Rourke's jaw was tight. Status? 70% of their orbital defenses down, Ward reported. We're detecting reinforcements inbound from the outer system. Send in the second wave. Break their back before they can organize. A fleet of Council reinforcements dropped out of FTL. Heavily armed cruisers, dreadnoughts, and corvettes took formation. But they were expecting conventional tactics. They were not prepared for the Orion Fleet. The two forces collided in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. The Resolute's forward batteries pulsed with blinding plasma lances. Conclave ships buckled under the firepower, hulls collapsing as beams sliced through armor. Rourke directed power into the Nova batteries. A searing column of energy erupted from the Resolute, vaporizing the lead Conclave cruiser. The resulting shockwave tore through adjacent vessels, sending them careening out of formation. On the surface of Conclave Prime, the sky was aflame. Civilians fled through burning streets as shock waves from orbital bombardments shattered windows and toppled structures. Panic radiated from the heart of a civilization that had never known true fear. In one of the Council's subterranean bunkers, leaders scrambled to comprehend the situation. They had dismissed humanity as a footnote, a species with dreams far bigger than its capabilities. And now their very heart was under siege. They are driving toward our central command, one aide shouted. This isn't a raid. They're here to dismantle everything. Jorath's voice crackled through fractured comms. Hold the line. Do not let them reach the control centers. But above, the Orion Fleet carved a path through defenders like a scythe. Their spearhead formation, centered on the Resolute, slammed through weakened defenses with terrifying precision. A formation of fighters broke through and unleashed a payload directly on the Council's communications relay station. With a thunderous explosion, the planet-wide command network went dark. Rourke's eyes fixed on the view screen as key targets blinked out one by one. It's time. Hit the command hubs. The Resolute's forward guns opened fire again, sending coordinated blasts down to the surface. Precision strikes leveled military command centers, administrative bunkers, and tactical uplinks. The command structure crumbled like a building with its supports blown out. Back on the Celestial Dominion, the bridge trembled from impact. Girath watched in horror as the last defensive lines fell. Officers begged for orders, but his voice faltered. No one had ever done this to them, not like this. On the Resolute, Ward turned to Rourke. They're broken. The planet's command chain is in shambles. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal, Rourke said quietly. We've delivered our message. The order echoed through the fleet. Engines powered up for jump. Ships began peeling away from orbit, leaving behind the devastation they had wrought. As the Resolute pulled back into deep space, Rourke stood alone on the observation deck. Below them, Conclave Prime burned, a ruined symbol of arrogance. He didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in annihilation, but there was clarity. The child's death had sparked a reckoning. Now the galaxy knew the cost of mistaking mercy for weakness. The wreckage of Conclave Prime still drifted in orbit, its defense platforms reduced to twisted metal. For the first time in centuries, the galactic order was in question. Far across the stars in the mountainous core of Earth's most guarded military compound, the Orion Fleet regrouped. Inside the Resolute, Commander Marcus Rourke stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by holograms depicting enemy movements and system scans. Admiral Elias Trask's face returned to the screen. The mission was a success, Trask said, but we both know this isn't over. The Conclave will retaliate with everything they have. They already are, Rourke replied. Their outer fleets are pulling back, consolidating around key strongholds. But more troubling, they're quiet. Too quiet. Trask leaned forward. They're hiding something. Our analysts believe they've been developing a Doomsday-class weapon in secret, just as we did with the Orion Fleet. Do we have a location? Nothing exact. Only whispers. But it's out there, and it's likely mobile or buried deep. You need to find it and neutralize it before they bring it online. Understood. Rourke shut the transmission and turned to his officers. If we're right, the Conclave's holding a final card, something that can wipe entire systems. We need help to end this before it starts. First Officer Ward raised a brow. Who would stand with us now? The Varaxian, a warrior species, once proud and feared. The Conclave crushed them generations ago, broke their fleets, turned their culture into labor and servitude. But they've never forgotten. Ward frowned. The Varaxian don't trust anyone. They haven't allied with another race since the fall of their empire. They hate the Conclave more than anyone. If we give them a chance to reclaim their honor, they might just listen. Within hours, the Resolute set course for the Varaxian homeworld. It was a harsh, wind-blasted planet of crumbling strongholds and sacred caverns. The Varaxian had once ruled a third of the Orion Arm. Now they lived under constant surveillance, kept in check by Conclave enforcers. In a high mountain citadel, surrounded by torches burning with thick black smoke, Rourke stood before Warlord Garen, the Varaxian chieftain. Garen was massive, armored in thick plates scarred from countless battles. He stood in silence, surrounded by warriors whose eyes never left the humans. You seek alliance, Garen growled. Why? Because we have the same enemy. The Conclave thinks it owns us all. Earth was targeted. A child was killed. We struck back. Now they're planning something worse. Garen's eyes narrowed. And what do you offer in return? Not gold, not territory, just this. Vengeance, and the chance to stand on equal ground once more. Fight with us, and we tear down the Conclave piece by piece. The chamber was silent. Then Garen let out a low, satisfied growl. You speak the language we understand. We will fight beside you. But if you betray us, we will repay it in blood. Rourke nodded. Agreed. The alliance was forged. Together, the Orion Fleet and Varaxian warbands launched a new campaign. Their next target, a conclave shipyard deep within a nebula known as Karas. Intelligence suggested High Counselor Jarath was regrouping there, preparing for a counteroffensive. As the Allied fleet emerged from FTL, the Karas Nebula loomed, dense clouds of radiation and magnetic interference cloaking their approach. But something felt off. Too quiet, Rourke muttered. No patrols, no sensor sweeps, just empty space. Ward's console lit up, multiple contacts emerging, energy readings off the charts. Ambush! Conclave ships dropped into view, encircling the Orion fleet. At the same moment, colossal energy barriers activated, trapping the humans and their allies in a containment field. Jarath's voice boomed across open channels. You believed yourselves clever, but this is where your rebellion dies. Rourke responded with cold efficiency. Focus fire on grid sector Delta 9. Break through before they tighten the noose. The fleet surged toward the weakest point. Varaxian warships formed up alongside human cruisers, their heavy cannons cutting into the conclave line. The nebula erupted in chaos, a storm of fire and shrapnel. The Resolute barreled forward, ramming a conclave destroyer and unleashing its full arsenal. With a final blast, the fleet punched through the barrier. They escaped, but the cost was steep. Several ships were lost. Varaxian leaders reported heavy casualties. Garen, though wounded, still stood. They bled us, but they did not break us. Back aboard the Resolute, Rourke stood with Ward in silence, watching the repair crews scramble through the hangars. They'll hit us harder next time, Ward said. They've got something bigger planned. This was a distraction. Then we hit them back before they can breathe. Rourke turned toward the star map, eyes fixed on the edge of known space. We go to the Expanse. That's where they'll hide a doomsday weapon. No patrols, no colonies, just anomalies and silence. Ward didn't flinch. Then that's where we'll end it. The Valari Expanse stretched before them, an ancient stellar graveyard shrouded in gas clouds and gravitational maelstroms. Few ships dared cross it, and none returned. If the Conclave had hidden a system-killing weapon anywhere, it would be here. Commander Marcus Rourke stood on the bridge of the Resolute, staring at the swirling void ahead. This is it, he said. Deep scans show a power signature like nothing we've seen before. That has to be it. First Officer Ward nodded, fingers dancing across her console. Confirmed. Multiple layers of shielding, massive energy output, a structure the size of a small moon. It matches the profile. No Conclave ships in visual range? Not yet, but they're here, waiting. Then we move now, before they spring the next trap. The Orion Fleet formed up, Varaxian ships guarding the flanks. They plunged into the Expanse, passing through violent eddies of energy and debris from dead worlds. Visibility was low, sensors jittered from magnetic interference. Then it emerged. Suspended in the heart of the Expanse was a colossal station, its hull bristling with weapons. Energy arced along its spine, feeding into a glowing core. This was Aphelion, the doomsday weapon whispered about in intelligence briefings, designed to wipe star systems clean. The moment the fleet drew near, alarms shrieked. Incoming! Dozens of ships dropping out of subspace, Ward called. They're surrounding the station. The trap had been laid. Activate shield compression. Bring all firepower to bear on the generator nodes. We take it out before it activates. The Allied fleet surged forward. Council ships, fast and heavily armed, closed the gaps, forcing the Orion and Varaxian vessels into chaotic skirmishes. Explosions flared across the field. Varaxian warbands fought like demons, ramming enemy frigates and boarding others mid-fight. Human warships maintained a corridor of fire, clearing a path toward the station. But Aphelion's defenses were overwhelming. We've knocked out 2 shield nodes, Ward shouted. 1 remains. Then we break through. The Resolute charged headlong into enemy lines. Plasma fire lit up the hull. The ship rocked, but its engines roared louder. Point defense systems neutralized incoming missiles, clearing the way. Rourke stood firm. Bring the Nova batteries online. Aim at the final node. The cannon surged with heat. A pulse of white energy blasted from the prow of the Resolute, slamming into the final node. It shattered. Aphelian's shields collapsed. Rourke didn't wait. All ships, fire everything. Target the core. Dozens of energy beams converged on the center of the station. Explosions erupted along its hull. Fires spread. Secondary reactors ruptured. The station began to list and break apart. But then Ward's console screamed a warning. "Captain, energy spike from the core. It's triggering a failsafe. Evacuate, now!" The Orion Fleet began emergency withdrawal, but Aphelion detonated before they could clear the blast radius. A blinding white flash consumed the station, sending a shock wave of energy across the sector.